Hi, I'm Yarona Boster. I am a communications coach, life coach, author, and speaker, and many other things. I am about to be on the Online Prosperity Show, and I'm so excited because we're going to be talking about communication. We're going to be talking about parenting. We're going to be talking about opening up new doors and pathways to learning about yourself and how you show up in the world. And this is really exciting stuff. So I can't wait to see you there.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination for exclusive insights into personal and professional growth. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a special guest whose journey is as inspiring as it is transformative. Now, Yarona, how are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. You see, other people try and find so many different words, but that was just a perfect way to enter into this podcast. And I can't wait to jump into everything that we're going to be talking about. And for those that are watching right now, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever met a person who can literally trip over air and still land on their feet while they have a story to tell? I've been behind the scenes for the last 30 minutes and I was trying to get a word in just to tell Yarona the instructions of the podcast, but here we are. So I was very intrigued with all the stories that she was telling me behind the scenes. But now it's your turn to meet Yarona Boster, who's a communications master, a TEDx speaker, and a two-time best-selling author. And in case you were wondering, her name actually means she shall sing. And so she's going to be singing a lot of songs for us today or telling us tales on how to sing really good songs. And just trust me, her message resonates far and wide. We spoke about topics I've never, really considered in only a space of 30 minutes. Now, I can't imagine what it would be like, on this podcast here today. So brace up, because we're going to be going from, how she navigated a slow-moving, the slow-moving gears of a public health job and all the systems that come along with it. And now she empowers individuals through her ventures under the LLC, Yarona Boster LLC, and also Footprints Coaching LLC. And Yarona has dedicated her life to helping others find their voice, harness the power of effective communication. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at her transition from public health to entrepreneurship. We're also going to be looking at the creation of the Communications Mastery Academy, which you need to be on the lookout for, as that's how she is empowering others to be, do, and have happier existence. And also she has developed the Healthy Signals parenting programs for those parents out there that are really trying to, communicate with their little ones or just really get an amicable relationship with those around you. I think this will be one to also look out for, and how her own personal loss has actually shaped her approach to coaching and life. So I encourage you to grab your favorite beverage. It could be a kombucha, whiskey for those that are a little bit sophisticated, and I want you to settle in and let's just get started on a journey that, as I have said, is enlightening, because communication is how we get by in this world. I mean, we are talking to people, whether it's physically or, in person, on Zoom. We're always having some sort of communication, and there are different aspects to it, as I have actually been made aware by Yarona. Now, Yarona, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. Your journey starts off in the public health system. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you were doing there, and just get us to the part where you decided this wasn't the path you were going to continue with.
Sure. So way back, I started many, many, many years ago, falling into the world of early childhood. Well, I shouldn't say falling. I did it with a little bit of purpose, but a little bit of falling as well. Into the world of early childhood, specifically for babies birth to 3 with developmental delays and disabilities. In the United States, we have a system, it's called, under the American with Disabilities Act, we have a system of different tiers from birth to adulthood that provide different services for people with developmental delays and disabilities. So when I first jumped into it, I was coming from the public health arena, and I jumped into it with all my feet because it was very important to me. My niece and nephew were both severely disabled and had lived, unfortunately, very painful and very short lives, each individually. My niece made it to the ripe old age of 14, and my nephew made it to the age of 22. They had a very rare recessive genetic disorder. What I find is that a lot of people will fall into the thing that has either brought them the most solution to their pain or has provided them with a lot of pain, and they're still trying to find the solution. That's what we tend to do in the majority of people's careers, when we call a career, not just a job. So I fell into that world for a number of different reasons, and I loved it. But in the public health sector, you're always dealing with policies and rules and regulations and guidelines. And I like to say, there's a saying we say, the wheels of justice move slowly. But I always find that the wheels of policymaking move backwards. So unfortunately, as we moved through, as we hit COVID, things were just really crumbling. And I said, I know I can do more for people. I had been thinking about this for a long time. I knew especially that I could do more for families. And over the course of my career, while I was working in the world with families, and especially with families that are new to the world of disabilities and developmental delays with their children, and really raw and vulnerable, I was also experiencing a lot of loss and a lot of death in my life. And it was teaching me something about the families and the way they're approaching their children. And I said, there's something else here. And I started to see that. And as that was happening, I realized with the policies and everything that was the guidelines, it was just really rough. It was really rough. And I chose to take a leap of faith, mostly in myself, that I could bring what I intended to the world with my highest values, which are integrity and wholeheartedness. And to help families understand that as parents, we're just trying to do the best with the knowledge we have. And sometimes we're not even aware of the blinders we have to the knowledge we don't have or aren't even accessing that's out there. So my desire as I left that world was to carve a path where parents could learn how to be their most functional selves and realistic too. Because in this day and age with parenting, we have so many options that back in the fall of 2024, the United States Surgeon General came out with a statement saying that parents are most overwhelmed with being parents. Yeah. So I realized that in the world we have right now, with so much information overwhelm and having more information at our fingertips than we really know what to do with, how do we find the path that's right for us? And here's one of my all-time favorite statistics to quote. About 13 years ago, they did a study that said they figured out how unique every human is based on your genetic makeup, the lineage you come from, and what it took to get you where you were when you were formed into this world. So where you were when you were formed into this world, and the environment you were formed into, and the people who made you, and then as you move on, the experiences you have. Humans are as unique as 1 in 400 trillion people. 400 trillion people. That tells me that every parent has a unique relationship with every child. So you could have 10 children, and every single child you have that relationship will be different. Every relationship with each of your children will look different. Every relationship you ever have in your life, every interaction you ever have will be more unique than any other given human being. And that requires a lot of learning that we just haven't been conditioned to. I had a conversation with a congressman the other day, and I said, I really think human development needs to be in the core education system curriculum. If we all learned how we were developing while we're actually developing, can you imagine what that would do? As we're moving through life and we're processing an experience, we're also saying, oh, well, I see why I'm responding this way. Oh, that makes more sense. And then when we have our kids, it changes everything about the way we respond to them, not react. Because if your kid's in the middle of the store and they're on the floor screaming about the toy that they're not going to get, and you just jump in and react, you're usually not responding from a place of knowledge and understanding. You're usually reacting because your amygdala has been fired, your limbic system, that fire alarm that goes off, and all you're feeling is your emotions. And your emotions are responding to your child's emotions, rather than acknowledging your emotions, recognizing them for what they are, and then turning the dial down just a touch so that you can engage proactively and responsively instead of letting your emotions lead the charge. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for bringing that up, because fish don't see the water that they swim in. And so many of us are just waking up. We're waking up to a completely different person than the person that went to bed. And yet we are showing up in a world hoping that everything just remains like that. I think you've just redefined being human in what you've just said there.
I'll add to that. This is something I tell everybody. As humans, the way we show up in the world is primarily with 3 things. We also have this core beautiful thing, and if you believe in a higher power, that's a whole different entity. But we usually have these 3 things going for us: our thoughts, our feelings or our emotions, and our behaviors. The only way other people can experience us is through our behaviors. You can't link directly with someone else's thoughts. You can't link directly with someone else's feelings. But the way you show up with the behaviors you use show people who you are. And communication is the way we express our thoughts and feelings with others. It is a behaviorally learned trait, a behaviorally learned skill. Humans are not born with the ability to communicate. We learn it in the environments we're raised into and the environments we move through throughout our lives. Great news, though. That means it's a behavior, it's a skill, it's something learned. It can be changed and modified. Not in a fake or false way. It can be modified because you understand that any given behavior can be rewired in the brain. That's neuroplasticity. We can reform how we choose to show up. That's one of the only choices we get in the world.
You know what's amazing about what you just said there? So many people don't get to experience this. In my household, I usually joke around and say it's like the United Nations. All right. So I came from Africa, right? My wife is Italian. And the other 2 hanger-ons that are just here, I think, because we buy them toys and make sure there's breakfast in the morning, they're Australian. And we've obviously decided not to teach them, our native tongues, although I try and sneak it in half of the time. And our kids speak English. And I'm just thinking, had that not been the scenario, had I just maybe stayed in Africa, if I had kids, they would have been a whole different language, a whole different culture, a whole different person. And it's just like you say, the circumstances that are happening in that particular moment. And I don't think people take notice of those kind of things, because, you were telling me about you being from New Jersey. If you happen to move somewhere else across the country, that would then mean your mannerisms and everything else won't be transferred, or will be transferred to that kid, but in a whole different environment. Now,
Absolutely.
with this kind of information, what that opens up is we're dealing with a scenario where, like you said, 1 in 4 trillion.
400 trillion.
400
trillion. We don't even have 400 trillion humans in recorded history.
I tried to make that math. It didn't math.
No, we didn't. We don't even have that yet. Of course, my husband then had to go ahead and make a joke. He's like, so when we have 400 trillion humans in recorded history, are we going to find our doppelgangers? It's like,
oh, wow.
It's like, I'm like, shush. We have a long ways to go before we ever get there. But here's the incredible thing. It's not necessarily about what we want to tell people about us. It's actually asking ourselves, how do I want to be received by this person? And there's a slight difference. When we're talking at people and not with them, we're not listening for what they're receiving. And when I say listening, I'm not talking about just our ears. I'm talking about our entire being, because there is such a huge percentage of communication that is nonverbal. And this is where I work with a lot of my speakers, because the work I do in the world of communications, and especially when it comes to public and professional speaking, is to help them understand that first you have to ask yourself, how do I want this message to be received by this person? Before you even start to tell them what it is you want to say. Because it's more important to ask yourself, what do they need to know, not what do I want to say? I could tell you 5 million stories. They're floating in my brain right now. But which ones I choose are going to be most impactful for this moment to help you receive what I want, what I wish for you to receive, what you need to hear in order to get the point. Most of the time, people just want to tell people what they know, but they don't ask themselves, but how is that being received? Oh, I want to tell you all that I know about XYZ. I have a speaker going on stage this coming weekend. So I'm moderating a TEDx event this weekend, and I have a speaker going on stage. I have a few speakers. I'm not one of the organizers. I'm one of their speaker coaches, and I'm moderating the event. And I have a speaker who talks about one of the most fascinating fields I've ever heard in chemical engineering. It's called rheology, and it is the study of flow. And that is pretty much any given product in this world that we use has a certain amount of flow to it. And that's usually centered around like viscosity and all this different stuff. And his point is that that includes our blood. And your blood should flow more like ketchup than water. And most people don't even realize that. And what's incredible about the world of science is that we've come 300 years, we've been studying blood pressure, and look what it's done for our medical field. But studying blood rheology would give us a huge uptick in our ability to conquer cardiovascular diseases and blood illnesses and all of these things, because we would understand the measurement of that person's blood flow, and we would know what kind of treatments and that are needed more accurately than just about anything else. So it's so fascinating to me, that information, but I want to make sure that he doesn't come at it with his engineer's voice, which is very dry and very like, okay, I need to tell it this very matter-of-factly, that professorial voice that kind of tends to be on the drier side. I can tell you this, I had plenty of professors who made me fall asleep. So here's the point I'm driving. It's not about how much you know. It's about how you can communicate what you know to get them to understand it. That's different. You can be the biggest expert in your field, but if you can't communicate your knowledge effectively, you're just going to be an expert in your field. The best teachers know how to communicate.
I love that so much, Yarona. I think everyone that needs to learn how to communicate just needs a 70s or 80s parent. I don't know if you had those parents that just had this look and you exactly knew where you were supposed to be, or and that was effective communication right there, like that, like that look, and then you obviously knew.
Oh my God, my mom had certain looks that I was like, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. I'm in so much trouble. Holy cow. And that's the thing. Here's the funny thing. So the reason I'm writing my parenting book, and it's called Unspoken Signals, is it's to help parents get more aware of the things that go unsaid than the things they actually say. Because a lot of times we're telling kids one thing and we're doing something entirely different. And I promise you, most of the time, our kids are following what we're doing, not what we're saying. Because they're following. And yes, exactly. And so, okay, I'll give you an example of this. It's a perfect example. I met this mom when I was in my old field, and we would go into the homes with these parents to actually do the evaluations and to have the meetings and even the services we provided, because this was babies birth to 3. So they were usually in a home, in a daycare center, wherever a primary caregiver was. So we're in the home and I'm talking to this mom and she says, I don't understand how my 20-month-old, her 20-month-old, so that's for anybody who isn't parent knowledgeable, that's 4 months before the age of 2. How does my 20-month-old have a developmental delay? He can scroll my phone better than I can. He can find exactly what he wants to look at and watch it. So I kindly explained to her that this is what we call a self-help adaptive skill. It is a skill that is picked up in one's environment when that thing is saturated in the environment. For instance, I don't know, when was the first time your kid picked up a TV remote? If you're a TV family, or if you're a watcher of TV in your family, your kid probably picked up the remote and started changing the channels. You're like, oh my God, they're a genius. Not so much so. This is not about cognition or intellect. This is about picking up a learned skill because that skill is something they're observing in their environment. And that's how babies grow. They learn what's in their environment and where the biggest focus is of the caregivers. So if the biggest focus of that caregiver is on their phone, they're going to focus on that phone too. They're going to watch and observe all the hand movements the parent is doing. They're going to pick up everything. I said to her, imagine this. Let's say a baby was born on a farm. And every day from the time that infant was little, mom and dad strapped the baby to their chest and walked out and milked the cows by hand. By the time that kid is 2, they're going to be milking cows like a pro because it's observational and it's saturated. When I say saturated in the environment, I mean that it is a normal part of your everyday routine. It is something that is so ingrained, it just becomes a part of that observationary process. And it is what we call a self-help adaptive skill, because this is how kids learn how to tie their shoes, how to put their clothes on. A lot of parents do the active work of that, but then this is how the kid learns how to stand up and do XYZ, how to go over here and open up the drawer that you don't want them to open, but they've been observing you opening that drawer. So they're going to go and open that drawer. Observation is so important in our earliest years. And that's what parents don't really get. And as they grow, it moves even further. So when we're worrying about letting our little ones learn their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s, we're not focused on the most important areas of development. And I hate to say it, but this is why I told this congressman we need human development in our core education curriculum, because it shouldn't take a person like myself, an expert in the field, to know what the early 5 domains of human development are. Do you know what the 5 domains of early childhood development are? Well, anybody watching? Anyone? With just a guess? That maybe people in the education system know, or specifically in the early childhood education system, but it's not, it shouldn't be that way. We should all know that we're not just looking for them to walk and talk, gross motor and communication development. And that communication is specific to expressive and receptive communication. They're 2 different things. Receptive is what we're taking in. Expressive is what we're pouring out. And remember what I said before, communication is a behaviorally learned skill. So if you're expressing yourself, if your parents are very non-expressive, you're going to be very limited in your ability to express yourself too, until you start to observe other people expressing themselves. And then your brain chooses, do I want to express myself that way or do I not? So that's just two pieces. We also have our fine motor development, our occupational, where occupational therapists come in. Also, there's a sensory component there as well. But then we have social emotional development. Most people don't realize that social emotional development is not innate in humans. It is a learned behavioral skill. Social emotional development is all about how we interact with other people and how we process our emotions and their emotions and how we engage in that socially. Humans are social creatures. We are designed to connect. And in this day and age with social media and the mass amounts of asynchronous communication we do, we are losing our ability to connect more than ever before. When I'm talking about connection, I'm talking about synchronous, in-person, eye contact, body language, verbalization without distractions all around us, like our phone in our face while we're talking. There was a study done that, when was this? This was a while ago, but there was a study done with preteens, like around 12, 13-year-olds. And they did this whole study they did a mock job interview with them. You know what was the worst thing they did? Eye contact. They couldn't make eye contact. Eye contact is, there's a reason they say it's the windows to the soul. When you're an infant, actually, I'm going to back up for a second here because I want to tell you that fifth early childhood domain. It's something I said before.
Hanging for number 5 now.
Number 5 is the self-help adaptive skills that I was telling you about. Self-help and adaptive skills are basically how we start to learn how to navigate the world for ourselves, how we start to do for ourselves. Self-help and adaptive skills are not just about the autonomy of doing, the choices we make, but also about the competency of doing. So if you're always getting your child dressed, always until they're 7, they're 8, they're not learning it for themselves. They're not going to be competent in doing it for themselves. This is really problematic. We have to be in line and in light of giving them the tools they need to do it for themselves, not constantly doing it for them. I know there are certain cultures and places where the parents cut the kids' food up until they're much, much older. They carry them around. Like I was talking to somebody the other day and her 7-year-old is still so light that she can pick her up on occasion. Well, my 7-year-old is not that light, so I can't. But I'm like, yeah, but you don't need to. And you want them to be crossing the street on their own without holding your hand. You want them to know how to do that and what to look for. Because that is their first development of safety and security. You shouldn't always be their safety and security net. You should be teaching them how to create and craft their own. So where was I before? I was going back to something else. But what's so important about this is that we have the ability as parents to either completely stymie our children's development or help them learn what they need to do it for themselves and on their own. And this is where we're going wrong more than ever before. Parents are just carving out. There's a new terminology, not just helicopter parenting. There's a new terminology called bulldozer parenting, where parents are literally trying to mow down all the obstacles in their children's path. This is horrible. We cannot do this. And here's the reason why. As I said earlier, the thing that was teaching me as I was working with all of these parents and families and my staff working with these families, and my staff would constantly come to me and say, Yarona, they're not listening. They don't understand that their kid needs to do it for themselves. They're constantly rushing in to do it for them. They're not listening about why this is so important, XYZ. They're just plopping them in front of a TV. They're just plopping them with an iPad. They're just putting their phone in front of them. And I came to a realization. As I was experiencing all the deaths in my life, and I had experienced a lot of deaths just all around me. My father was a Holocaust survivor, so I was born into a family knowing of some of the darker sides of humanity. Then I started losing people. And then my father, his cancer came back. I took care of him until his last breath, literally. I had my hand in his mouth and was cleaning his mouth out when he took his last breath. Then my niece passed away. Then my mother contracted cancer. Then she passed away. My nephew passed away. My brother passed away. My father-in-law passed away. And these are the highlight ones. I'm not even talking about the friends that I lost in between all of this. The babies I lost myself due to infertility issues that my husband and I struggled with for 10 years.
Right.
But the loss started to teach me something. And here's the thing about life. We don't get lessons from what we want. We get lessons from what we need. If we ask God for patience, he doesn't give us patience. He gives us an opportunity to find the patience in ourselves. When we're looking for happiness, we don't just get given happiness. We look for opportunities to be happy. And this is true of the struggles and hurdles and pains we go through. And these are what I call foundational losses. When you're young, those losses are small. The loss of a toy because it broke, maybe the loss of a pet. My son experienced that before he even turned 4. Then you have other things that you start to lose. The loss of a good grade, even though you studied hard, not getting into the after-school program you wanted, not getting into the college you wanted, losing a friendship, losing a relationship, not getting the job you wanted, losing a job, losing a house. They're all building us to the most important loss of all, the loss of life. And in the natural order of the loss of life, because all life is finite, at least in this particular piece of vessel that we're carrying ourselves in, the natural order of things is that parents go first. That is the natural order. Not always true, unfortunately, for a lot of us who've experienced the other way around. So I ask a lot of parents, and this is in one of the chapters, one of my books. As a parent, what is the one thing you want to know at the end of your life? If you're imagining yourself on your deathbed and you're laying there and you're thinking about your role as a parent, what is the one thing you'd want to know? And I want you to answer this for me. What do you want to know for your kids?
Did I live? Did I matter? And what are they going to remember about my time on life, on Earth?
What else for them as they keep going on in life?
For them, obviously, with the way we've set it up for them, I just want them to continue the legacy that we've started, and for them to actually know they are okay and they're capable.
Okay. Here's the thing I've experienced in all the deaths I've experienced. Whenever somebody's on their deathbed, do you know how many times they need to hear someone they love tell them, we'll be okay? We'll be okay. And that okay is usually centered around, I promise we're not going to fall apart, fall into a deep, dark hole of depression and never be able to get out of it. We'll be emotionally okay to move on. It'll be painful, but we will move on. Because when you're on that deathbed, you're like, oh my God, what if the pain is too much for them to handle? And they do something horrible. I don't want them to lose their life because I'm losing mine. This is what I've seen over and over again. So what it tends to come down to is I want to know my kids will be okay without me. And so when you think about that, that means you have to start what you do with your kids with that end goal in mind. Not your responsibility to protect them for the rest of your life. It's your responsibility to make sure that they have everything they need to do it for themselves. Because one day you're not going to be there. You could be a billionaire. You could carve out, and I've seen this, unfortunately, children of really wealthy parents who have coddled them, who have given them everything they've ever wanted and or needed, cannot handle life when their parents are gone. They can't handle it. They don't know how to take care of themselves emotionally, mentally, physically. They don't know any of that. Or they have other people doing it, but they never can do it for themselves. And the craziest thing about humans is there are 3 core needs of human beings. The first one is connection. The second one is control, or we can also call it autonomy. And the third one is competency. Obviously, we all need to feel connected to people. And as I said before, we're not. We're really worse than ever before we're not connected. And we need real connections, not just kind of messaging back and forth and things that go unsaid in those messages, because people read into those all the time. The text messaging is one of the worst ways to communicate, because you read into a lot of what somebody else gives you based on your own emotional state. So we need that connection. Control, autonomy is really all about the ability to choose for oneself, choose what path I'm going to take, choose what clothes I'm going to wear, choose what career I'm going to have, choose what kind of family I'm going to create. Choose. That's autonomy at the essence. And the final one, competency, is the ability to do for oneself, the ability to actually take care of yourself, the ability to actually make a decision, the ability to do a job and do it well. And it doesn't matter what job that is, because I can tell you this, people with disabilities have jobs and when they feel so good because they're doing something, that is competency at its core. I have a dear client of mine who did his TEDx talk, and his son is severe on the autism spectrum. And at the age of 9, they noticed he was really into painting, and he was good. So he and his wife, and together with others, built this incredible foundation, this incredible organization where people with autistic children with artistic tendencies could come and create art that would then go into different buildings and organizations and companies. And their artwork would be sold to these companies. And without fail, every time he'd speak to the parents, they'd all say, like, you don't understand what this has done for my child, what this has done for me, to see that my child is capable of doing something for themselves. That's competency. To see that you are capable of doing something for yourself, doesn't matter what that thing is. You could be good at collecting garbage. You could be good at cleaning up a beach. You could be good at toll booth taking. It doesn't matter what it is. If you are good at something, that is a core human need. And when parents disable their kids' ability to do things for themselves, they're taking away one of their core human needs.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us through all of that. Now, Yarona, I can understand why the path in public health would have been a slow grind, because all of these things would have wanted somebody to action and actually implement, whereas they would need fields and fields of studies, bureaucracy, red tape, and to see whether it's on, if the government can actually make that a possibility. And I don't know how you feel about my next statement, but most of the things that are designed are actually there to benefit a whole different world that resides on top of what we think is the government. And so much of it would have just relegated somebody to some form of medication, some form of diagnostic that just keeps somebody as a customer more than somebody whose problems get solved. And you also did touch up on, this whole last part that you mentioned about not allowing people to be competent. We've all been systemically disabled, for lack of a better word, by giving everybody a trophy when equally not everyone is a winner. And that alone will just make people so entitled to thinking that this is how the world is supposed to work, and they're passing that on to their kids and things of that nature. And I can so see that. So obviously this would have frustrated you so much. With just me hearing your frustration, I can understand that. And you decided to then take it on to entrepreneurship because you thought you could maybe do it in your own way and help those that sort of needed. Let me know, what was that transition like for you? I mean, obviously you're living systems that are set up You know, at least there's guarantees, there's ways of things happening, and you're waking up the day you decided to be an entrepreneur, and nobody's sending you a coffee or feeding you with grapes.
I love that you said that. I want to make something really clear too. There is a value to systems. There's a value to systems because it creates order out of chaos. But what we have done over the course of evolution and the course of civilization is we've created systems not to create order out of chaos, but to create restrictions in chaos. And that's a distinct difference. So systems are great. And actually, as human beings, we do this all the time. Our brain does this. It naturally organizes and sorts things. In nanoseconds, we can walk into a space and we can say, is there a threat here? Our brain automatically, our survival instinct, that reptilian brain that still works for us goes, ooh, I perceive threat. In nanoseconds, we do that so quickly. It's one of the reasons why sometimes we are at odds with the civilizations we've created in the democracies we've created, because our natural mechanism tells us to look for the danger, look for the threat. And here's the crazy thing about it. Look for something that's out of place here. Look for something that's change, that is showing me a difference, a change. I believe in a higher power. And one of the things I always say is that I believe our higher power had a great sense of irony, because he created a species that is so fearful of change when change is the only thing we can rely on in living. It's inevitable. Change is life. You're constantly in a state of change. You're constantly evolving. Your cells are constantly changing. So here's the thing about those systemic things. When we moved into that restrictive aspect, we didn't allow for the areas of gray. And I would often tell this to my staff. Where we worked, the area in New Jersey we worked, was a massive ecosystem in and of itself. We had some of the richest people in the country to some of the poorest people in the country. So I would always remind my staff that you're walking into a situation where you have to meet the family where they're at. Even if our system tells us we have to do this, we're going to operate we recognize the system looks at things that are black and white, because that black and white tends to be really squeezy, restrictive. But humans don't function in black and white. They function in the gray. And when we function the majority of the time in the gray, it means we have to figure out how to individualize this to our needs. So yes, of course, if you're on a road and the speed limit is 60 miles per hour, and there's a circumstance where you are rushing to the hospital because you're, hurt or something happened, or your loved one is with you and they're hurt or they're in labor or something like that, you're in a moment of the exception to the rule where you're speeding. You're probably speeding. I mean, you should go the speed limit, but nobody quote me on that. I didn't say anything to go out of the speed limit. No. But there may be times where there are moments where you can be the exception to the rule, or you can function in the gray and ask, how can I make this work for me in this emergent situation? But we shouldn't expect every single human to be the exception to the rule, because here's the problem. When within a system that organizes chaos, a correct system that orders chaos, we can be more flexible in that kind of a system, not in a restrictive system, but in an ordered system that allows for exceptions to the rule. So if a cop pulls you over just speeding and they're like, oh, you're in labor. Okay, go. We'll drive in front of you. But if you're in a restrictive system, the cop's going to be like, I don't care what it was. You're going to get a ticket because you were going over the speed limit. You see, the distinction is we have the ability to individualize it in the moment. But we're not doing nearly enough of that these days. We are lost in a way where we're either on this side where everyone thinks they're the exception to the rule, or everyone thinks they can only be a part of the rule. We are stuck in extremely heavy black and white thinking. And there's a reason for that. And a lot of the reason stems from our Gen Z and our young millennials, because of the way they were grown into this world. And that's a really long story, so I'd have to get into that another day. But there's a reason we've gotten here, and there's definitely a way to get out of this, for sure. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And how did you get started in your business then?
Okay. So like I said, I took the leap. I said, that's it. I can't do it anymore. So I officially quit. I stayed with them for a bit so that I could help them transition. And then I started. I'm one of those people who, okay, if there's an appropriate certification process, I'm going to follow the appropriate certification process. So I started following all the mechanisms that I needed to do. At the same time as I was doing that, I decided I wanted to get on the TEDx stage. So I said, why not? I could try this, right? What's the worst that can happen? I don't get it. But I tried and I did. And I landed my own talk. And my talk was specifically about loss and parenting, death, and the greatest thing that we can ever deal with, and the hardest role we'll ever take on with no training. So that's what I call parenting. And while I was doing that, I started to see a path. Okay, I want to coach parents. I really want to coach parents. But I started to see a bigger path widen up as I study. Okay, I'm going to be a total geek here. One of my favorite places to go to online is the Library of Science Medicine. And I read all the journals and I study all the things and I read everything up. And so I started studying more about linguistics and communications. So there's all sorts of areas of linguistics that our vocal variety comes from. They're called prosodics and suprasegmentals. I started learning about semiotic theory. I started diving into the communication side because I wanted that to help amplify what I could do for parents. But then I realized that as I was in the speaking world, I was moving into the speaking world, and it was really cool. And I ended up in India speaking in front of 750,000 people. And it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. But I also realized something. I love speaking, but I actually really shine when I'm supporting speakers, when I'm supporting people who want to learn how to communicate better with their audiences or how to communicate better in their profession. Because a lot of people in their professions need to utilize speaking in some form or another. So I said, wait, okay, I don't want to lose the work I'm doing with parents, but I also really am starting to jump into this. And then I started consulting for some companies as a speaker coach and realizing like, this is really something I do well. And I've been told by a couple of people. So I said, one time I saw a comment from one of the people who came to one of my classes, and he said, Yarona is really good at telling you that what you just did is really horrible, but she makes you feel so good about it that you have the energy to actually work on improving it. He said it with a little bit more curse words, actually. Like he said, Yarona has the ability to tell you your stuff is a word for not good. And it was really funny.
How are you helping people at the moment? Because, that's the most important part, where we now need to know
yes,
how you're doing that for others.
Yeah. So I do things two different ways. One, I have my parent work. I still do that. And I have an asynchronous program that parents can take. This is one of my favorite things about it. Healthy Signals Parenting Program. You can go in, you can purchase it, and you can do the modules on your own time. They are video modules that you can listen to as if you would listen to a podcast. They're myself and two other people who are support team people. And there are 10 modules. Along with that, there are PDFs, and then there's journaling prompts. Parents love this because they can do it on their own time. They can listen to it as many times as they want, and they can keep on journaling. And it really helps open their eyes to the foundations of where parenting comes from and really how the kind of parent they want to be. On the other side of the fence is my Communications Mastery Academy program. And this is where I help speakers harness their ability to effectively deliver and hone that delivery to the point that they could be reading the encyclopedia out loud and the audience will be enraptured with it. So that's what I do in that program. And this is also, there's a little bit of asynchronicity, and then the live training classes are where the magic really happens, because anything we want to do in life takes practice. Competency isn't built in a day. Everything we do requires practice, 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 practice. There's a reason medicine is called a practice. We're always learning. So the more you practice and learn, that's when you really grow. So my Communications Mastery Academy gives them the opportunity to learn through the modules and then come to class and practice, receive feedback from me. And my classes are really small. I only take 5 people per class. I teach many classes throughout the week, but only 5 people per class because I want to give them enough individualized attention that they can really get a lot of value. 20, 30, 50 people in a class, that's a master class. You're not really going to get a whole lot of personalized attention. The 5 people, I give you really explicit feedback on what you can do differently. And this is where a lot of people are like, well, how did you do that? Especially when their topics are all 5 different topics. I just finished my last cohort, and my new cohort is going to be rolling out. Oh, what's today? Today is the 21st. So my new cohort's going to be rolling out the week of May 5th, and it's going to be ongoing enrollment from there out. So you can jump on board anytime, and you get 6 months of practice, 6 months of weekly practice that you can come to, the recordings, and so much more. There's also a lot more. Yeah.
Absolutely. And where can people go on the internet to get started on this magic?
YaronaBoster.com. Easy peasy. Check my name there. Just add a .com to it.
I'll put all those links in the show notes below so that people can get started. Now, Yarona, obviously, we've touched on a lot of stuff, which really showcases the depth of your expertise and things of that nature. Now, I must say, I wasn't prepared for this kind of conversation because half of the time I just get, parenting teachers or communication teachers, somebody that has a 3-year-old and they've managed to get them to eat breakfast, and then they automatically call themselves a parenting coach, you know what I mean? And a communication coach, they can tell their dog to sit and jump and things of that nature. And they think, okay, now I can go out in the world and speak to people. But looking at where you've been and the things that you've done, you've dealt with a very difficult personal experience on your own, which involves your niece and nephew, who obviously, as you have alluded to, have, went through what they went through. And also you were doing it in a public setting, which was giving you enough practice, as you have said, because you're dealing with all these different kids. And the fact that you're also dealing with them from different, affluent positions in life. So you dealt with the poor and the rich, and it just really gives you a really nice cross-section of humanity and everything else that's supposed to be happening, which then, if you tie it and put it in a bowl, you would have wanted to give it back to obviously your bosses and tell them, hey, this is how it's supposed to be handled. But they failed you on that aspect, and now you've gone on and created it, in your own way, in your own pace, and hence the 5 people cohorts, because it's not a one size fits all. Like you've given us a number, 1 in every 450 trillion people, just like, not even Elon Musk has that kind of dollars, you know what I mean? So we haven't even really grasped how it actually works. My question with all of this is, what can humanity do to get it right?
The biggest thing is to start with empathy, or another term for it is called the platinum rule. So everybody tends to know the golden rule, right? The golden rule is the biblical rule of do unto others as you would want done for yourself. The platinum rule is do unto others as they would want done for themselves. The implication is that what you want for you might not be what someone else wants for themselves, which requires you to have to lean in with empathy and learn what they need and ask them what they need. So if my husband, he knows I love cats. I also love dogs, but I love cats more than dogs. If he bought me a puppy for my birthday, I would be happy, but I would be happier with a cat. And he wouldn't be leaning into understanding me. He would be clearing away for his allergies, but he wouldn't be leaning into me. And that's what we all have to do. I'll tell you a thing that happened the other day with my son. And this probably is the best explanation. He had a a moment of an existential crisis as a 7-year-old. He got really upset. His whole day was like school. Then he had physical therapy because he has a syndrome. And then he came home, and then we had very little time. He had a little bit of TV time. Then we had dinner, and then he had to do this big project. By the time the project was done, it was time for bed. And I said, all right, it's time for bed. He had a complete meltdown because he was like, when do I get to do what I want to do? All day, I'm following what everybody else is telling me to do. Everyone in the world tells me what to do. Here at school, at PT, at home, everyone's always telling me, and I just don't get to do what I want to do. And number one, very important, kids use absolutism words. They use these words of like, oh, everybody in the world, all this. I never get this. I always have this problem. That's a language that goes along with how you're feeling. It feels that big. It's not necessarily realistically that big. The worst thing you could do as a parent is argue with them and say, well, that's not true. They're not in their logic center in their brain. That's the worst thing you could do is try to get them to see reason. You've got to tap into it with empathy. And then he put his head against the wall and he said, sometimes I just wish I had never been born. Yeah. And that was an existential moment for him. And I had to acknowledge that the way he was feeling was so put upon, was so like he doesn't get to lead his own life. Everybody else is leading his life for him. And that's what he was feeling. So first I asked, are you gonna be okay? Do you want me to stay? Do you want me to go? Because that's really important to ask them for permission to be with them, or if they need time alone. That's really important for kids. You cannot come bulldozing in and try to take care of it. You got to own the fact that they might just need to feel miserable. He wanted me to stay, so I was like, okay. And we sat down and I said, that's some really big feelings, honey. Really big feelings. To say you sometimes wish you'd never been born, that's painful. You must be feeling really sad, really hurt. And this is when you tap into the empathy. You tap into what they're feeling. You try to help them express how they're feeling accurately with accurate words. And I said, I get it, because a lot of days we can have a lot of things we have to do. And then there's what we want to do. What we have to do sometimes overrules what we want to do. But you know me, and I'm always looking for ways to make what we have to do also a little bit about what we want to do. Make the what you have to do a little more fun. I said, unfortunately, we didn't get that today. And that really, honestly, just plain old sucks. There's nothing you can say. You can't fix it in that moment. So the best thing you can do with your kid is just acknowledge and honor that fact. Then we went upstairs and I said, look, if you get dressed, we'll play a quick game. Get yourself ready for bed. We'll play a quick game. This is where it gets funny. So we went upstairs. He got dressed, comes out. I'm like, all right, what else do you need to do before you get, to get ready for bed? He's like, oh, wash my face and brush my teeth. So he's like, well, and I'm like, all right, but here's the deal, buddy. You are the sole responsible person for your body. Mommy's not, daddy's not. The only person who's now responsible for your body and your well-being and how you care for your body is you. So in this, you get to choose. How are you going to take care of your body? Are you going to brush your teeth and wash your face, or are you not? And now we had been drilling into him the importance of it for a long time. So he's like, oh, you know what? Fine, I'll just do it tonight, because otherwise I'll have to do it twice in the morning.
The message, thank you. I'm glad. Yeah.
The logic of children. But although funny enough, I never ever said he had to do it twice, but he logicked that out for himself. That's what he decided on. But the thing is, we don't tend to give our kids enough trust that we can trust in them to at some point start to make the right choices for themselves. If we've been drilling that into them, if we've been drilling it into anybody, anywhere, any place, trust, empathy, and ultimately autonomy to make the choice for yourself. We can't make the choice for them. If we keep making the choices for them, they'll never, never be autonomous. And the same thing is true for speakers. You can choose if you want to have a coach, you can choose if you don't. I can tell you honestly, from all the event organizers I ever speak to, they're like, Yarona, they do really great on the application, really good in an interview, and then they suck on stage. What's going on there? And I said, that's because most of the time, people who can talk think they can communicate. Talking and communicating are two totally different things. And we aren't taught naturally how to do that. So I ask people, if you want to be a football player, would you just try to do it without any coach, any advisor, any mentor? Because I don't know about you, but I've never heard of somebody getting to the NFL with never having had a coach. It's the same thing is true for speakers. If you want to learn how to be the most effective speaker when you're in public, or how to be the most professional speaker when you're in front of your, 1,500 person employees, you need to learn the art of communication. And this goes across the board at any direction, whether it's in our professional life or our personal life. Communication is the behavior by which we show up in the world and how we express ourselves. And it starts with being more empathetic to the people you're talking with and communicating with than doing it for your own reasons.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. I think that alone is a book waiting to be written, because so many people are fighting, as you have given us an example when we started, with their kids in the grocery store or in the toy aisle, and the kids are just throwing a tantrum, and the mom doesn't want to be embarrassed and is just looking at their own feelings, whereas what is actually happening there is a scenario that could literally be avoided by allowing the kid to feel their feelings and then go on and do that. But somebody might argue, Yarona, if I let my kid go like that, then they'll only be having donuts and M&Ms for breakfast. And obviously, in my household, they wouldn't be having any milk. It'll be chocolate milk and everything else that comes along with it if they had their way.
Well, if that's your diet, then there's a good, strong possibility of that, yes. Remember, the unspoken signals we send to our kids are also about what we're doing. So if your diet sucks and it's that way, why are you trying to teach your kids something that you're not doing yourself? This is where integrity comes into play, my dear. And let me tell you, it's not easy. And there's a balance too. I'm not saying people should be unrealistic. This is the worst thing a parent can do, is try to make unrealistic changes. The best thing you can do is make incremental small changes until it feels so natural, you're not even thinking about it. And then move on to the next thing, and then the next thing. They're small, really small. And you're constantly verbalizing them, and you're constantly communicating them to your kids. And you're showing up the way you want them to show up in the world.
I like that, because monkey see, monkey do. And for those that are watching right now, I know this one has been a bit of a long one, but obviously there's so much that we can be grabbing and learning, from Yarona there. I want you to, in the comments there, answer this question. If you've ever faced a moment where effective communication actually changed the outcome of a situation, be it in a school playground or, in your own community or in a shopping environment like we've just established there, I want you to share your experiences in the comments below, and myself and Yarona will be checking out, what it is that you're talking about there. But now, Yarona, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today, but it would be remiss for me to not ask, what's next? I mean, we've established where all of this was created and where it emanated from and what it is that you're now doing, because I certainly believe in life, we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. Okay, so for us to be able to live our best lives, or live the lives that we, exemplify our values, we need to have learned to do that. And you've already established all of that, and now you're showing us how you're sending the elevator down, helping the adults and kids all the same, through the workshops and the work that you're doing, and also helping people communicate, because literally I feel like when people can communicate, it helps them grow their businesses, it helps them get a promotion, it helps them literally have really good environments around them, and also experiences with their community and the people around them. I think you're single-handedly giving people back to themselves.
like to think that. I'd like to think that. Sometimes I think I'm opening a door.
Mm.
And in fact, I have a big tattoo about that. After my mom passed away, I got this other, I have a lot, but I got this one tattoo. And it's a gray world, and a door is burst open with color coming out. And there's an archway over the whole thing. And it says, the doors we open and close each day decide the lives we live. And a lot of times we're afraid to open that door because we don't know what's on the other side. But that's just it. We don't know what's on the other side. It could be the most glorious thing you've ever experienced. It could also be something that's hard, that's really painful. We don't get a choice in what happens to us a lot of times in life, but we can decide how we want to look at that experience that we've had and choose what perspectives we want to take from it. It is my belief that there is no truth, there's only experience. And everybody has their perspectives on their experience. So when you have an experience, you get to choose, what do you want to take away from it? Do you want to take away the ugly stuff, the painful stuff, the resentful stuff? And I'm not saying you're not going to feel those things. Believe me, I do. I do feel those pains some days. And I let those pains come into me and breathe into me. Because if I don't, then I can't process it. Then I'm just trying to put a wall up, and that's not good. Because that wall takes me away from the good things on the other side too. But that's just it. I get to choose how I want to see those things. I get to choose the fact that I was honored to take care of my parents into their final breaths. That I was honored to spend the time that I did with the people that I've loved and lost in this world. And I'm humbled by the greatness of every human being I've ever met. I don't care who you are in this world. Everyone has something unique about them, because that's how unique we all are. And when we can find that uniqueness and pull that thread up and walk through that door with that uniqueness, we never know what we're going to find on the other side. And sometimes it just requires the hand of another person to help walk with you through the door. So find the person that'll help you walk through the door the best of your ability.
Absolutely. And I think you've just opened up this doorway into your world there, Yarona. Now, what's next? What can people anticipate in your world now that you've brought us in? And, you know, what exciting things are you working on that obviously people should be on the lookout for, especially those that are watching up until right now?
The biggest one is going to be my parenting book. Yeah.
Wow.
I am very excited. I am getting very close to the end, and it's going to go into editing and then the publishing. And I have a publisher who wants me to do some book tours, so that might be coming out as well, like where I'm going to be going around and doing some fun stuff where I get to meet and greet and find people. And you know, I hope people will realize that whatever it is you learn from any person you meet, try to find something, try to find anything you can learn. And whether it's from my book, whether it's from a class, whether it's from your podcast, whether it's from, it doesn't matter. Just seek learning, because learning helps you grow. And that is the best thing we can offer to the world. When we have something to teach and something to share, keep teaching. Be the teacher and the learner, the learned and the learner. That's the best way you can go through the rest of your life. Learning and teaching. Yeah.
Absolutely. And well, thank you so much for giving us this gift. And I mean, obviously you did tell us about the platinum rule and everything else, but in the process, I don't know if you realized that you actually committed a crime, Yarona.
Oh no, what did I commit? Oh, what did I commit?
And you did not mention that you are writing a book and it's about to be published, and don't pledge to come and, you know, launch it on the OnlineProsperity Show. So
of course,
that.
my apologies. Yes, I will definitely go into it. It's going to be chock full. It is chock full of stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough first of all, for joining us on the Online Prosperity Show. And second of all, the journey that you have taken, because your life story and your experience have so much value embedded in it that, you know, people can just keep learning, like you say, from you, because every facet of what you spoke about is just like a cross section of everything that we're experiencing in life right now. You know what I mean? Like, so many people have these phones, but they're not connected. Oh, so many people have these families, but they are not connected. So many people have these opportunities at work, but they're not connected, first of all, to themselves, the people that work with, and to their own callings and their own values and everything else that comes along with it. I think we've just explored just the transformative journey of not only your life, but we also dived into all those personal experiences and we relived your life. And now we're looking at your professional endeavors with eyes of wonder. And how did she manage to do that, given the scenario and the space and the circumstances that were around you? So for those that are watching right now, if today's conversation resonated with you, consider exploring Yarona's programs. First, there's a Communication Mastery Academy where you can enhance your speaking skills and connect authentically with your audience. And then there's also the Healthy Signals Parenting program, which I think is the one that comes with the book that she's just mentioned, where you can actually empower your parenting journey with effective communication strategies. And now, Yarona, I can't thank you enough for all of this. I'm going to put all those links in the show notes so that people can get started on that journey. And this is what I want to encourage somebody who's watching this. If you found value in what we're talking about today, just share this episode either with a parent or with an executive that is trying to connect with their team, a teacher that's trying to connect with their students, or just a community person that is finding it difficult to connect with the people around them. What this will do is it opens up the world that you live in, because once somebody knows a thing or two about communication, you now have a friend and you've also liberated that person from self-harm and also harming other people in the process. And now they know how to show up in the world. And if somebody has forwarded this podcast to you, first of all, thank them. And don't be mad because they've given you something that you could learn, but learn from what we've just spoken about in here. And while you're at it, stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to be discussing ideas that would actually help you lead a happier and more fulfilling life. Now, Yarona, once again, thank you so much for your time. And for those that are watching,
My pleasure.
please show up in the comments below so that Yarona can actually see you and obviously see if they can help you or not. Until next time, bye for now.